employers.
Okay.
So I'm confident, you will be a contributor, as it seems people have a variety of experience, and there's always something to contribute. So
Okay.
thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Anybody else new today? Okay, well, for roll call, we'll just go with the names that are on the screen. If Sarah, you recognize everybody there. I see Jasmine is the only one that doesn't have a last name there listed. You're all good?
Yeah, I think it's Jasmine Williams. I'm gonna guess from.
Okay.
Yeah,
That right,
yes, that's
Jasmine?
me.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Hi.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for joining, and we'll keep rolling along.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Sarah. I'm supporting today's meeting with Molly Cook, and I'll be reading through the roll call, just reading the Zoom participant list. So if you don't hear your name called, go ahead and put it into the chat. All right. So I have Marcy Johnson, Craig Kissinger, Mark Lohman, Mary White, Jasmine Williams, Molly Dowling, Molly Cook, Matt Kelly, Suzette Crenshaw, LaDonna Henson, Antoinette Golden, Eric Grebner, Shannon Hampton, and Mike Massey. Again, if you didn't hear your name called, go ahead and put it in the chat, and I'll then kick it over to Marcy.
So welcome as well to our group. We keep growing, and that's exciting. We've got a lot of people interested in our work, so that's cool. So I just want to go over, for those of you that are new or just haven't been in some meetings, where we're at with our timeline and our plan. We started out with identifying, what the segments were within the Opportunity Youth, and then started talking about the barriers that we had. So back in the fall, we had several people present to us about their programs and talking about, how they handle the Opportunity Youth. And now we're in stage for identifying those strategies. So we've looked at the barriers. So now what can we do to, is there resources we can create or find to let people know about? Are there solutions that maybe as a group we can come up with, or different strategies? So that's where we're at in the timeline. After this, then we will reach out to the business sector to understand more of their needs based on what we've worked on, and then market those strategies that we've come up with. So we are moving along in our timeline. So that's a good thing. Sometimes, we get stuck in the middle. So that's where we're at right now. Is there any questions about our deliverables, work plan, or timeline?
Awesome. So just to kind of recap those barriers, in December, again, we sent out a survey, we captured all that information, and we discussed really these barriers: lack of education credentials, basic needs, parental involvement, and career awareness and transportation. We then, Molly and Sarah led us through an awesome tool called a Jamboard. I thought it was kind of a neat experience, and hopefully others did as well. We're always looking for ways to engage the group. So as we look at what those survey results were, that's what we focused on with the Jamboard. Next slide, please. And, we see, there of these barriers, they're pretty similar, right? That they're pretty much across the board. The big one that gets pulled out is transportation, and I was actually shocked to hear that, in some parts of the state, we don't even teach driver's ed in high schools. But even in cases where we do, the access to a vehicle for individuals is hard, right? So how do you get kids to programming is a big need. So as we looked at these different barriers, that's where we then took these and really focused on, what are those solutions? What are, specific things we can do? And that was the whole purpose of that Jamboard exercise. So that, from there, we can continue on building that kind of work plan and set us up for our quarterly meetings and other work throughout the year, whether it be policy changes or highlighting some programs, or maybe suggesting additional programming across the state with our partners. So Marcy, you want to lead us through the Jamboard discussion and what we found?
Absolutely. So we'll start with the first area, which is transportation. And I'm going to say we, but really it was Sarah, took the Jamboard stuff for us and tried to put it into buckets. So we have 3 buckets: exploring existing and creating funding opportunities, exploring creating resources, or exploring existing models. So I don't want to read all of these to you. I just wanted to pause for a minute and give you an opportunity to just kind of look at it and see what we have in there, and maybe think of some common themes that you might see as you're looking through this. So I'm just going to pause for 30 seconds and just give you an opportunity to look at that. Okay, so I know we'll get to a section later where we can that kind of talk about where we think our priorities are within these areas. So if there's anything that like came out to you, if you want to talk to about it now, or write it down, and we can address that in that next slide. Okay, so we'll go to the next one. So we'll do the same thing here. This one is the topic was lack of basic needs. So I'll give you about 30 seconds just to take time to make some notes and look at this section. Okay, any initial thoughts there that anybody wants to address? Or questions?
So I think the challenge, Marcy, as I look at some of these, a lot of these, we already know there's systems to lift people up.
Right.
It's how do we I think the challenge that this group will have is how do we make sure the kids get access and that it's at the right level and it's something that the kids want to participate in. As an example, I remember I was mentoring an at-risk youth who complained he was hungry. I'm like, well, don't you have the free breakfast and lunch program? Yeah, but the food stinks. Right. So, that's the challenge is kind of that delivery part. It seems as I read this stuff.
Yep. And sometimes we look at it and we think, do we really have the capacity to do that? And that's maybe where we have to bring in another department or another agency to kind of help and provide us with that information.
Yep.
Hi, this is Mary White. I don't know exactly what Carrie Reuter, what she has been, participating in with this, but I look at all this and, just within the couple bureaus that I work in, most of these needs are taken care of with the programs we have. So, we work directly with schools, we work directly with community leaders, we work with the health departments, all of them. the local offices, substance abuse, domestic violence. I mean, anything you need, we have it. We do send out referral resource directories to all the youth and parents within the schools. I know that for a fact. As far as doing that in the community, I believe there's a couple other programs that are out in the community doing a lot of awareness with the youth. So, I mean, I think a lot of this is already being done. I know the transportation is a problem because of the rural areas, but it's been a problem for many, many years. But I do like when I looked at your transportation chart, it looked like you guys, you know, had the Uber and Lyft and all that going. Plus, they do give money for transportation. The state does to kids. They do childcare for free for kids. So, I mean, there's tons of resources out there that these kids should be able to go to school or go to work. So, it's
Hey,
just.
sorry. Hey, Mary, this is Craig Kistner. A question I have with these existing programs, and maybe this is something that you may need to research and provide back to the group is exactly what kind of I mentioned, right? We know programs are available. How often are they taken advantage of, right? So is there a meaningful metric, right? Is there data as we look at it that we can share with people about utilization as a percentage of the needed population, right? Because as an employer, as an agency, I think that's where the rubber meets the road. I mean, it's on the business side. Oh, it's great that I have all these benefits, but if nobody takes advantage of the benefits,
Right,
what's the
you're
point
looking
of
at how
operating? Right.
percent are utilizing these services.
Yeah. So if that's something that you have access to, that'd be probably a great resource to share with the team, and you know, maybe the channels in which, you know, services are provided, and we can look at, you know, is that consistent across the state, or how could we enhance that to get better utilization?
Well, and I don't know. I have to do some research on the utilization, but I do know each program has their data. For example, one of my programs is teen pregnancy prevention. We go into the schools, we do a school-based health education, sex ed curriculum, evidence-based with all the youth in the freshman class. So everybody gets it. We go to report card day, we go to first day of class day, we do tons of stuff with the schools and the community. We set up, you know, all kinds of different things for the parents and the youth. We have youth and parent champions in our coalition groups. We meet quarterly. The coalition groups do a ton within the community, get these resources out. So we were just talking about that the other day, how many of these providers that I have are actually doing referrals. I know there's getting the resource directories out. I mean, they've done stuff very creative, like magnets and all kinds of stuff for the parents to have. But as far as how many referrals they do some referrals. But for example, my health educators are only in the classroom for that 1 hour for 10 weeks. And so most of those kids do not ask for referrals from that health educator. They usually ask within the school. So we're working more with the school and the school health centers to give us more information on what kind of referrals, where they're being, you know, what are their needs, that kind of stuff. I mean, we are out there doing as many, getting them as much resources, but I mean, we do it by program. We haven't actually utilized by the state a percent of the population served. So I don't know where I would find that. I will sure do my research and see if I can find something. But I do have it by program, like how many youth are serving, how many youth, are getting good, like pre and post testing. Those kind of things. We have information on that.
Right. only from the standpoint, we know there's still a need, so it'd be great to see that data. So
Okay.
thank you for sharing that.
Okay.
And the other thing I had thought of, and Mary, you might know this, ICCB, the Illinois Community College Board, developed a resource so that people knew where to go to get certain supports. And does DHS have something similar to that, that maybe something for us to all look at too, that maybe that's, you know, something that can get shared later?
Like I said, we do collaborate with other programs within DHS, for example, substance abuse, public health, family planning, all that kind of stuff. And we do, you know, refer those kids there, and they are going. I mean, we are getting a good amount of kids, you know, getting the services they need. But I'm sure DHS has something. DHS has every program known to man. So, yeah, I would start. Public health is good.
Oh yeah.
The new public aid, that stuff, the local offices is good to make sure that they're getting their, you know, like food stamps, their cash, their free daycare, you know, transportation vouchers, you know, all that they get at the local office. That's stuff that they get there. And then DHS has individual programs that work with the youth out in the community. So.
Okay. Awesome. Great. Okay. Anybody else before we go on? That's great. Okay. The next one is a little smaller. You know, we talked about just that students don't have access or permanent connection to responsible adults. So as you can see here, a lot of this is talking about, you know, mentoring and apprenticeships, working with parents. So thinking about, you know, what might be going on already out there that we want to, you know, let people know about, or how can we work to engage mentoring into some of the programs, or maybe there are, like, you know, Mary was talking earlier, you know, there are programs that have these types of things in it. So, you know, identifying those programs and figuring out, you know, how we can increase the funding for that as well. And again, how do we work with the parents? We've had that conversation before, is, you know, how do we get parents to understand the information as well? Anybody around this one?
No, I think that's good, Marcy. And I actually I met somebody in Washington, D.C. over the last couple of days that has a really robust program that includes mentoring. That, you know, I think it'd be good if we look at not just successes in our state, but successes in other states to bring in best practices.
Yep. Okay, Sarah. So here's a big one. So I'll give you a few minutes to look at that. But, you know, we've talked about this before, and if you've talked to a student, and many times when you talk to an adult and they don't have a job, or if they do have a job, they really aren't aware of a lot of the opportunities out there. And so I'm just going to give you a few minutes to look at this, and then we can talk about it. Okay, so what are your thoughts with this? You know, there's something that ISB created, was a career guide that we've made available to all schools. You know, one of the things that we can look at as well is getting to the career counselors and the advisors at the colleges in relationship to these career days. But those are some of the things that came out of, you know, some of the things that I was thinking about. What is some other thoughts? I like this one blow up the old career fair. That's really a pet peeve of mine. I'm sorry if anybody really loves them. I think it's okay, but there has to be more to it than just taking a kid to a career day and saying, I've done my job, you know. So I like that. I like what that was, like what was said there. Anybody want to provide thoughts or input on the career awareness pieces?
Hey, Marcy. This is Mitch Dickey. I'm with
Mitch.
Transfer. How you doing? One thing I was thinking on the front of career awareness, and I was just talking about broadband yesterday and the big broadband package. Like, I feel like there with CEJA, with the broadband infrastructure and probably some other like very industry specific opportunities, there might be opportunities to start incorporating some of that a little earlier in the pipeline. I know with the CEJA listening sessions, they talked a lot about training, and I think that's fine. But I also think that there wasn't enough conversation about how you're going to plant the seeds for who's going to come to the training. And I think that that might be an opportunity for some additional career awareness, not only dollars and resources, but then opportunity to really focus on some big state initiatives. So that would be one thing I would suggest is, like, I would love to see ISB and DCEO and the folks that are working on CEJA and probably the broadband work too, to sync up about how some of that can be pushed into the schools and opportunities for youth as well.
Thank you.
I know
Marcy-
there,
oh, go ahead,
Go ahead,
Molly.
Molly.
just thinking about, the various leveraging technology resources that are out there, from apps and websites that try to capture organizations, that have everything from careers to apprenticeships to training programs, so that I think is critical to drive as an existing resource, that we are connecting the dots between, the investments that have been made in this technology to students across the state, because we're constantly trying to make sure we have a good directory of services, right? And so things come and go every single year. I know it's a moving target all the time, but that is so critical, because lots of people are trying to thread this needle, of helping young people understand what's available to them. I think the other thing that's new related to technology is just the way that VR can be used in the classrooms, to beyond, being in someone's work environment and beyond the career fair day, is like new technology being used to help experience different kinds of jobs through VR, that I think is really interesting and critical. And then I was going to say, just the opportunity to have creative interactions between companies from different industries and young people, just like the meet and greet we just did last week that Craig and Marcy were both at, where we had lots of young people meeting with industry partners to just practice interviewing and get in front of them and sort of have some real world exposure. So just any kind of engagement, any kind of interaction is valuable between young people and professionals.
Marcy, I was going to say, similarly, talk about innovative, right? Both here and in that last topic we were talking about. We know there's programs, we know there's job fairs. How do we innovate it to get the kids to engage? Just going through training over the last couple of days, I think there's really a call to action for employers to better engage, and how do we help create a template for employers to engage, not just like in the great programs that Molly organized at the high school level, but at that early age level. I mean, I remember, in grade school having career day. I don't know that they do that anymore. I don't remember my kids going through career day, right? So how could we innovate those programs? Because heck, we know we could probably name 10 people that we know that even, went to college for one thing and they're in a different career today, right? But still having them have that exposure early and learning about different careers and what they look like and what they do. I think that really needs to start, or can start, in that early education. And how do we get employers engage in that through employer collaboratives to really create that long-term pipeline of, this is what I'm excited, what I want to be when I grow up. We know it's probably going to change 10 times, but still at least they pick a path versus, I did talk to some kids at the event last week that they're graduating. So what do you want to do? I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
Well, what excites you, right? So getting that innovative engagement from employers, I think, is really key. That it doesn't rest solely on the education system. We need a collaborative approach.
Yeah, I agree. First, I was going to say, Molly, did Mitch pay you? No, I'm kidding. Mitch loves the VR, so that's why his eyes really lit up when you mentioned that we should do VR, use that experience. So I was just giving you a hard time. Also, I think I agree that what we did last week was really eye-opening. I mean, like you were saying, I interviewed one group of students, but one of them said, I said, well, what is it that you're into? What are you doing for career? And he goes, well, I really like broadcasting, but I'm also doing automotive. I go, you can do it together, right? If you really like this. And his eyes looked at me like, I can? They don't see where one love can transfer into another love at the same time. And I think that goes back to that career awareness, all those opportunities. And back when we were young, the jobs and the careers now didn't even exist, right? So how do we think towards the future for 5, 10, 15 years down the road too is another challenge in itself.
I'm a professional TikToker. Right? I mean, that's a thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry. Anybody else that wants to add to this?
Yeah, this is Mary. I think in today's world, the youth are different now. COVID changed youth. I think getting good counselors, getting good staff into schools, and even these, they can't get the staff in. You know how restaurants are. They can't even they don't have the head count to even stay open. So I think a lot of it has to do with, these kids right now are really different. And so you have to spoon feed these kids anymore. And I think the schools need to be much more involved with these youth, and they're not. I think that instead of a career fair, they should do some kind of assembly or something where they have breakout sessions on what to wear to a job interview, how to act in a job interview, how to go locate jobs. I mean, a lot of these kids don't even know how to do that. Everything needs to be on social media though, too. I mean, if it's not on social media, it's not happening in their lives. So, it's just a shame, but a lot of these kids just don't want to work. So it's a whole different group of kids. It's just really weird. I don't know.
I think though we have 20s and 30-year-olds that are feeling kind of the same way. I think they didn't get those experiences, so they need that additional help. I mean, so hopefully we can, at least the secondary students, when they graduate, can, let's see, school situation. Thank you. Thanks, Shannon. Yes. So if you saw Shannon, she said that departments that schools that change their departments to career pathways are ahead of the game. This, along with the same schools working with the regional offices of education for flexibility and opportunity, allow for more business connection and robust ways to help students. Absolutely. It's finding all those resources, right? Yeah. Anybody else that want to give their thoughts?
Yeah, Mary, just I think a follow-up to your point, because I think it's a good one, is something we hear a lot right now is that students want to see how whatever they're going to be doing is going to make an impact on the world around them, and really connecting how that employment and job pathway is representative of, building something or having impact beyond just, doing work. Has been a lot of, I think, of the career change and like how we're thinking about how you talk about a career and what the opportunities are. It's not just laying bricks, it's you're building cathedrals or, building, the structures of the legacy basically is what some of the laborers were talking about. So, telling that story a little differently is, I think, a big part of it too, and something that we have to think about as we create materials and, do good programming.
Absolutely.
And I think those media channels, that were brought up, social media, I know, Suzette, maybe you can talk about how, I don't know if the ABC, but the NCCER actually created kind of trading cards to give to kids that, they're all into, back in the day, the Pokemon cards and the baseball cards and the Star Wars cards. They actually had career cards, didn't they?
Yes, they do.
Cool. That's
So,
really cool.
and that really highlights what's involved in the job and the wages and whatnot, right, Suzette?
Exactly. So what happens with let me grab mine so I can show you guys what it really looks like.
Dun, da, da, da. Just because I know that's an innovative solution that they came up with.
Sorry, my wallet's upstairs. I took my bag. We just got in last night, so my bag is upstairs and my wallet is in my my luggage upstairs.
Maybe you could just take a picture and send it to us afterwards. That'd be great, and we can share it with the group.
I promise you I will, but what it is it's a talking point. It has the participant's name, their NCCER number, and this number follows them throughout their career. If they continue their education, all of their credentials are in NCCER. So every test that they've completed, every performance profile that they completed, when they get to journeyman status, all that information is on that NCCER card. And that number follows them forever. So it's a great talking piece. Every participant looks forward to getting that NCCER card and number.
But also they have career cards too, I believe, Suzette, where it talks about what it means to be a bricklayer, a project manager, a welder. That's more what I was talking about. Again, something that a younger kid could look at and see. I remember my daughter, who wants to be a vet, still collects out of Nat Geo Junior the animal cards that gives all the animal facts.
You're absolutely right.
That's cool. I'm gonna take a second. I'm gonna call out a couple people because, for example, Matt Kelly, you guys are doing career awareness in your area. What, anything you want to share about career awareness?
It's a tall task. So I have 17 high schools and they all do something completely different. And it's, the thing is trying to expose young people. You got to do it younger. It's got to be done in elementary school, and it's dealing with parents, everybody that has children. If you go to a first grade spring concert, you cannot find a seat to sit down in any auditorium. But when it comes to 11th graders that are in my welding program, I've got 95 kids in that program and I got 3 parents that show up. So you got to do it younger. You got to figure it out. We as EFE directors around the state, there are 54 of us. We try to help facilitate with our corresponding school districts, and it's tough. And we're competing right now, coming off 3 years of COVID. These kids can't read. They cannot do mathematics. If they didn't have help and support at home, and now we're trying to add this on top of their lacking of academics, it's just a tall order. It's a tall challenge. And, trying to figure out how to get businesses involved. Right now, look at all the layoffs that are going around in the technology sector. I'm going to tell you right now, kids that want to get into that field, they're looking twice at it, because now I've got 12,000 employees are being laid off by Google or whatever it may be. And then, you got others, you got the trades, you got the trade unions, you got everybody. And I mean, there's a lot of players in our state. I love NCCER. I love their programming. It's not big in Illinois. It's huge in Florida. It's huge in Alabama. It's huge in the South. But our trade unions here, there's not a lot of respect for it. because you have to go down a certain path. So we just got to come together and figure out what it is that people value and being able to provide those opportunities. And it's tough when you're dealing with all the other outside factors. Sorry, Marcy, that's where we're at.
No, I wanted to ask, and we needed to hear that. You know what I mean? That's part of this group, right? Is for us to be like a think tank and to think about how can we, if we feel value like an NCCR type thing, who do we need to have at the table to figure out how that works? So I think that was really great, Matt. So thanks.
Thank you.
How about, I'm going to throw out, how about Eric Hill, are you on?
Yeah, good morning, Marcy.
Anything you want to add, Eric? With
No,
the work
I
you
mean,
do?
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this really covers the work we've done or are doing with Skills USA. And really, I think we're talking a little more of like when we're talking career awareness, Skills USA is a little bit later in that conversation. But I do think there's a lot of value in a lot of communities around the state are doing some really good career awareness pieces. And I think if we could help, maybe from like an industry perspective, one of the things that I'm hearing is we have a lot of industry partners that are getting pulled into like 8th grade events or 6th grade exploration events, but then kind of, I guess, to Matt's point, like once they get to high school, they're losing connection with some of those students. Now, obviously at our championships, we have a lot of partners that have connections to them, but I'm wondering if there's a way to build more of a continuum from when these students are getting these career pieces in 8th grade with, a large company like John Deere. How do we keep them involved through that student's career path so that as they get closer to being an actual employee that the company can retain, how do we keep that connection in place? I think we're going to see the ebbs and flows of a ton of different industry sectors across time, but at the end of the day, like even to Matt's point, I think there's tech is taking a hit right now, but also tech 5 years ago was adding 12 million employees, I think, to that industry. So I just would love to see a way of trying to get out of those silos where we're doing career exploration at such a young age. But then sort of, it's like, it's an experience and then we move on, right? It's an experience and then we move on. How do we build that chain or build that continuation? Because I think our partners are going to get a little bit burnt out on attending 15 career fairs at a 8th grade level, 9th grade level, 12th grade level, and post-secondary. That's a lot of work for them.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's those opportunities, Eric. That's a great point for those younger kids is, when I've talked to parents or I've talked to kids, oh, it's so far down the road, right? They only see adults doing it. I think there's opportunities through great programming like Skills USA has, that when that 4th or 5th grader sees that freshman or sophomore doing carpentry, doing cosmetics, doing those skills, it's not as far away, and that kind of creates more of that link long term, right? Because it gets embedded that, wow, it's not just my dad who does it, my brother could do it, my sister, my cousin, my next door neighbor, they're doing it in school, right? So maybe it's utilizing some of the youth activities across the country to bring that into the earlier ages so that they have more of a connection to people, to kids, right? Not just adults.
Yeah. Great.
Hey, good morning. I'd just like to give an example of you going in and really nurturing your children at an early age. My son was 7 years old and he said he wanted to be a pilot. So we started to purchase simulator games and do things structured whenever they had different events. We would take him to those events. We worked for the airline back then, so we would take him to the airport and just let him see the planes take off and land. And he would use the skills in taking off and landing by his experience of what he saw on the runways or whatever. Daniel is now not only a pilot, but he's a 32-year-old captain because we nurtured that dream that he had in him from the age of 7. So it starts at home.
And so again, going back to how do we help parents understand all those pieces as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
so we
Thanks,
need
Susan.
to educate the parents. Getting parents to come to events or anything is virtually impossible. So a lot of it should be, we do a lot of parent pieces on social media. A lot of the schools have all their emails. So we do, we send out a blast to the parents. They're aware of, like, we send out like different like pieces, like how to talk to your kid about sex, how to talk to your kid about, you know, creating a resume. How do you want to learn? And then if they want to learn, then they can reach out to somebody to learn those functions. A lot of these parents don't want to do anything. So it's really a shame, but it's reality. And, you know, they just have no, I mean, I think a lot of these kids maybe want to do stuff. It's just that they don't have that push at home.
Okay, I guess
Mary,
we
I
gotta
love it.
go on. I got a time check. We only
Yeah.
have 16 minutes. So let's go on. Sorry, this was one I knew we'd have a lot of conversation about. So the next one, Sarah, I think still falls into what we were, a little bit of what we were talking about a while ago, is those industry credentials, right? This adds to that, so that, you know, we were talking about unions and businesses being engaged, you know, how do we get the information to the students about the importance of credentials and having that information and that education. So I'll give you just a few seconds to just kind of look at this. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to go into a section where we're just going to try to talk about where we think our priorities should lie. So we won't have time really to talk about credentials today, but if that's a topic, we can bring that back to another time.
And I think this goes to Marcy also, the prerequisites for credentials, kind of going back to those basic needs and
Yep.
pre-apprenticeship, right?
Yeah.
Um,
That whole continuum. Mhm.
yeah, because I hear so many employers, they don't need credentials necessarily, but they need them prepared to get the credentials.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, and I think sorry, I know you said not talking about credentials, but I think with the credentials
ahead.
piece, one of the things we need to look at is making sure that in, like, kind of like what Craig said, right? It's, do employers actually understand the credentials that we're supporting? Like, they may support, if you drilled into what a credential actually was, they may end up truly supporting that. But if they don't understand what that credential means, are we really helping our students by getting them that credential? So I think there needs to be an
Right.
awareness piece to employers and a validation that that is in fact what employers are looking for. Because if it's not, then we need to stop pushing that. And if it is, and they just don't understand it, we really need to help employers understand, you know, like a perfect example is NCCER, right? The unions in Illinois do not support or necessarily want the NCCER credential. But when you really drill down to it, it aligns perfectly to what they're going to be teaching in union apprenticeship. So although the NCCER part might not be great, they want a student that's been through that NCCER curriculum all day, every day, because that's the ideal candidate for them. So it's just that awareness piece that we've got to solve, and also make sure that we're properly aligning between industry and our educators.
Yep. Totally agree with you there.
It's really about value. You know, if the employers aren't going to value it, then we're all spinning our wheels, and then we're having kids
money.
jump through hoops that there's nothing at the end. So I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Why should we spend the money on giving kids the credentials if businesses aren't going to recognize it anyway? So, yeah. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. So here's how we have this laid out. And we would like to get your thoughts on this. And I'm wondering if maybe it would be easier if you had a thought, maybe put it in the chat. Why don't you think about any of these areas? And then in the chat, you could put transportation and put something that you're thinking about in relationship to that. And that way we can maybe get everybody's input on that. So thanks, Matt. Come back, okay? All right, so if you get a chance, so let's just take a few minutes, get in the chat, and we'll leave this up right here and I'll just give you, a couple minutes for that. And
Marcy, can you just reframe, sorry, one more time, what
Yep.
the activity is that we're doing in the
Sure.
chat?
So based on what we just had a while ago, and we might be able to, we could go back and pull up each slide if that would be helpful. Hopefully people made some notes, but thinking about each of the areas we've discussed today, what should our priorities be within each of those areas? Should we look at certain funds or certain existing resources, or maybe there's already existing resources that you know about that you could throw in there? If maybe you know about a model that's already there, and maybe it could be just figuring out what it is that we want to focus on. Yeah, like Craig says, what are the barriers to using Uber and Lyft for kids? You know, so it's a variety of different. Just trying to get everybody's thoughts and input on this, I think would be helpful to help us then start working on our work plan for our group. So based on the conversation today, I think there was a couple of them that really bubbled up. But let's see what everybody's thoughts are on this.
My eyesight is too small to see what I'm typing, so excuse the spelling errors, even with my glasses on, because I have it on my third screen.
Third? I didn't even know there was such a thing as having a third screen. Okay, how are we doing? Continue to go ahead and enter your information in. Does anybody have any thoughts or feedback they want to share right now? Yeah, just keep putting in the chat box. And so Sarah, next slide. So as a group, we want you to know that we are going to be looking at presenting at the quarterly meeting. Oh, Craig, sorry, this is yours. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I thought it was you. That's no problem. So our quarterly meeting is going to be March 17th on a Friday. This is immediately following the day following the quarterly IWIB meeting, where we're hoping people can attend, and we will have both in-person and virtual options available. But it's really an opportunity to engage with members of the community and members of the IWIB. We will be featuring the principal of the Bloomington Area Career Center. And really, I think from everything that we've talked about and these barriers that we've discussed, it gives us kind of a roadmap to kind of frame a conversation with Tom of, what are they doing and what are they doing specifically to help address some of these barriers, and what have they've come up and what are success stories that they've had, along with how that's led to career pathways to employment. And I think, Marcy, you're hoping that they can recommend an employer to kind of talk about that and how that process works with them, correct?
Yeah, Tom said that he's got quite a few businesses that he works with. And so he's going to try to find, a really good partner that he can also share to let everybody just understand how that type of schooling works and how the connections are to business and industry.
Right, because I think certainly many of us can speak to when we create these hand-on work experiences, regardless of the subject matter, we see more engagement with the kids and we see better learning, and how does that flow through to successful career placement. And I know, talking to kids in the past, I've used just, even if they aren't doing area career center stuff, why do they like biology or, their science classes? Because they get to do neat experiments or see demonstrations, right?
Mhm.
So just things like that.
So
Anything
we're
else you
hoping
want to
that
add on that?
No, I was gonna say, I'm just hoping that everybody can join that day, either virtually or in person. Um, I think it's a great opportunity for Tom to present to us, because many times we know what a regular school looks like, but we don't know what an area career center looks like, how it's how it functions. And, and just thinking about, as we have a discussion item for then, is like thinking about how we can be more innovative for schools, whether that is, like Craig said, whether it is an area career center or a secondary school. I think trying to think about more ways to be competency based. Colleges are kind of going that way as well. So thinking about those opportunities, thinking about how do we meet the needs of students. Like we talked about earlier, just show me you know how to do it. If you know how to do it, let's go on to something else. I don't want to make you sit here for 3 weeks and us talking about something that you can get done like that. So that's just some thoughts on that. Any questions about our meeting? But we wanted you to know what was going on, what the plan was, and if you have any thoughts about what we should share at that quarterly meeting, please let us know in relationship to that. Okay.
The final thing that I always have, Marcy, is
Yep.
it's lonely here as an employer. So please talk to business partners that you have. We would love their engagement and get their insight, right? This is an opportunity for them to engage and, understand they don't have to attend every meeting, but it would be great to have a bank of employers that we could go to, because I'm obviously very okay with sharing my perspective, but that's just my perspective and my experiences. And I would rather enable the entire group to benefit from multiple employers' perspectives. So if you have somebody that you can recommend we reach out to, or if you want to invite somebody, we welcome you to do that. We want to be inclusive in this group, particularly with employers, whether it be, retailer, hospitality, construction, you name it. I think there's an opportunity, because at some point these youth will be hopefully future employees. So
Absolutely. Okay, so next slide. So our next steps is our next meeting is February 22nd from 9:30 to 10:30. We will take all the information that we have here and we'll try to put it into some sort of a little bit of a work plan to get your feedback and thoughts, because we would love to share a draft of our work plan at that March meeting as well. If there's any way for us to get that done, I don't know. But we really would like to have you all at the next meeting, get your thoughts and input. I think the communication today was great. I really appreciate everybody's feedback. It takes all of us, not just a few. So I want to thank you all for coming today. Craig, anything else?
Nope, just we'll probably have more information on that quarterly and maybe ask for people's input if there's anything that we missed, have them
Yep.
look over that to best engage, you know, the group and anybody else who attends that meeting.
Okay. If there isn't anything else that is burning desire for any of you to bring up today, we have about a minute left, I think. Anybody else's
Thanks,
thoughts?
everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks for attending. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.